Hello everyone, so I am back with part 4 of the journal workshop, and before we get started I thought I would share with all of you a few more antique stamps that I just got in. So these stamps that I purchased, I got these off of eBay, and they're stamps from the 1970s, and I guess they belonged to somebody who worked in the government. Yeah, so one of the stamps says secret and the other one says confidential. And I loved the font, and that's what drew me to these. And I could see collaging with them or using them on some of the receipts. And I do use these in making some of the journal pages that you'll see here. And I understand that for those of you who have been following along with this workshop and you're not going to have the same exact stamps that I have, you can use other text stamps, or you could even take and do a Word document and type, you select a font similar to what I'm using with the stamps, and just do a Word document and cut that out and do it that way. There's a lot of different things that you could do in place or as a substitute for what you see me doing when I'm using some of these antique stamps. Okay, so I thought that I would just go ahead and stamp these out and see how they look, see how the imprint is, and make sure that they all stamp out really nicely. And this, I always love doing this part because I don't know. I get excited when I get new stamps. So that one works really good. And now let's try the one that says secret. Yep, I love these. I love them. And these are going to be wonderful to use for creating journal pages or even tags. That just ties in really good with the whole concept of having a journal. And I did, in my previous video, I did ask for all of you to leave a comment on your thoughts of my creating a stamp set that has similar that would replicate similar antique stamps that I've shown. And so I am working on that. I'm working on a set as we speak. So I hope to have that available soon. Now this is some of the lace that I had a lot of you ask for, and so I finally got some in, and I will be offering these for sale in my shop probably at the beginning of July when I return from Montana. I'll be able to get everything packaged, and my thoughts were to bundle a few different laces into a package so you get a little bit of an assortment. And I thought I would do like maybe a yard or a couple yards each. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Before I go packaging everything, if you want a package that has 1 yard or maybe 2 yards and has 2 or 3 different types of lace within that one package. And the more I'm able to bundle things together, the better pricing I'm able to do, as opposed to offering them all in separate packages. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And I am doing this as a trial run to see how this goes. So if the lace sells, if it ends up being a really good seller, I'm going to bring in more and carry a lot more different types of this lace. So this was just kind of a trial run to see how well it sells. And I love lace. I don't think I could ever have enough lace. But I also have a budget, or at least, yeah, I try to have one. And so, I can't purchase everything that I want all at once, but these were some of my favorites that I saw, and they were also ones I thought would work really nicely for journal making or card making or mixed media tags, those sorts of things. The other thing I loved about these laces and trims in particular is that they had that real vintage flair to them, and some of them you could create beautiful dangles with, and so that's what drew my eye to some of these trims that I'm showing you here. This one I just loved. I loved it. It's got kind of that layered look, but again, just the pattern and the texture of it, just loved it. And this lace, I keep calling it lace, I should probably call it trim. This trim is really soft. It's not that stiff. You know how some trims feel stiff or synthetic? I think most of these were cotton polyester blends, so they're, a nice soft sort of trim. I loved this one. This one is probably my favorite. It just, to me, screams that antique trim look. Love the pattern. I love the texture. I loved this one. So yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' comments on what you think about the lace and about, if you'd be interested in me packaging it in 1 yard or 2 yards. Your thoughts on that would be greatly appreciated. It would help me out a lot. Okay, so a new release, digital release here. Again, listening to your comments and getting a lot of requests for more lined papers, especially with the latest launch of the Fashion Bazaar digital collection. So I did go ahead and I did some more lined papers, particularly it's more like stationery type papers that would coordinate with the Fashion Bazaar collection. So I did come out with this. I did a quick newsletter. If you didn't get it, let me know and I'll make sure to add you to the list. But I just released this, I think maybe 2-3 days ago, and I did offer a coupon code. So for those of you who went ahead and already purchased the Fashion Bazaar bundle where you got everything, and then you wouldn't have gotten this because this came after, I did offer a coupon code for those of you who have already purchased that, so you'd get 20% off this listing for this digital collection, and then it would end up being the same price as what the new price is for the Fashion Bazaar bundle. Hope that makes sense. But if you have any questions, just shoot me an email and I'll be more than happy to help you with this. And the other thing is there's a few papers that I showed where I did revise them a little bit. I added in a little bit more, so you can check out the listing and you might see a few papers that are a little bit different because I did that after I already shot this video. Okay, so what I'm showing you here is a project that I did previously. There's a video on it, and it's that little paper bag mini booklet, and I'm going to work more on this, so you can catch that video and catch up if you haven't made that already. And what I'm going to work out of for this part of the workshop is building another signature page. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking through everything that we've done so far to see what I might want to tackle next. And one of the things that I thought that I would cover in this part of the workshop is using things that you might have just lying around, such as envelopes that you find in your bills, and showing you easy ways to decorate those, taking some more of those lined papers from the paper pads that you can get at the Dollar Tree. I showed how you can make some ledger papers with those. I'll be doing that, and also building flaps and working off of flaps. And I love working from flaps. I think if you really want to create interest in your journal and with in building your signature pages, one way to do that is to incorporate the use of flaps. So I'm going to cover that as well. So you can see here where I picked out one of the base signatures that we started on. And this is one of the new lined papers that I just came out with from the Fashion Bazaar collection. And what I thought I would do is use a stencil and just kind of dress up one of those blank pages there. And this is just an easy way to decorate a white page or a blank page, just kind of give it a little bit more eye candy. And these stencils, I have them coming. I probably won't get them for another couple weeks, but I will put a listing out and I will accept pre-orders on them. With pre-orders, I cannot say with certainty as when to expect them, because many times they're in production or they're being manufactured or they're sold out and I'm waiting for them to be remanufactured, or they're being purchased and it's from another country and I have to wait for them to get shipped over and imported here to the US, and so that takes time. But the other part of it is I'm never sure how much to order. So it's really important on pre-orders, if you want something, if you see something, be sure to get your pre-order in as soon as possible. Many times what happens is I'll place the order, and let's say I place the order on, well, okay, let me back up. I announced the pre-order, and let's say I announce it on April 1st. So I place the order on April 15th and let everybody know that you have 2 weeks to get your pre-orders in. So on April 15th, I place my order for all those pre-orders that everybody placed from April 1st to like April 15th. And then 2 weeks come by and it's the end of April and I'm just getting my order, or it might be the following week. So these people had to wait 3 to 4 weeks to get their order. Well, when I get that shipment in, I have to take that product and give it to those who placed their pre-orders first. And many times I end up selling out because I only order, a few additional from what's been pre-ordered. And so that's why it's so important. If you see something, I know it's not fun waiting. I myself, I don't like to wait. It's, it's like you order something, you want to get your hands on it, you want to start playing, but it's out of my control with some of these items. And, I'm stuck having to do a pre-order. And so I can't stress enough, if you see something and I do have it as a pre-order, just make sure you get it in right away. And I do my best to get it as soon as I can. Once it hits my doorstep, then I get it shipped out right away. I mean, as soon as it hits my doorstep, I'm getting orders out right away. Okay, so you can see where I stenciled and I took some of my antique stamps and I just did a little bit of stamping on that page. Now I'm taking another one of the lined papers. Now this one was a draft. It's not a very good print. I just did it on my inkjet, and my inkjet, it's not working really great right now, but I like to, run my drafts from that printer just to kind of check for any small errors. And so that's what I'm using here. And my laser jet, my HP laser, I have a lot of people ask what printer I use, and I use my HP laser jet, and that's the one that does all my beautiful prints. Yeah, you can kind of see the difference between this inkjet print that I'm using here, and if you look to the right and the one lined paper with the lady at the bottom, that's done with my laser jet, and there's really no comparison in the quality, and it's just a lot more vivid and vibrant. Toner ink tends to be a lot more vibrant than some of the inks, through using an inkjet printer. So okay, and what I'm doing here is I took And I decided to take one of those signatures that we built up and cut it in half because I thought it was too bulky. And so I wanted to kind of, make a better use of it, make it to where it wasn't going to be too bulky or, just kind of separated a little bit because there was so much to that signature there. And then I just thought it would work better here. And I do that when I am journal making. I might start a signature page and I just keep building it and building it. And then it's like, whoa, kind of overdid it, which I tend to do. And then, I find I have to like revise things or, break things down a little bit more. So that's what I decided to do with that signature page. And I know that little flip out section there that I did with that 12 by 12 piece of paper, I believe it was in part 2 of the workshop. I know some of you got lost, and I'll try to redo that if I can, if I'm able to. It was just kind of a experiment, and I don't know. I'll try to do it again if I can. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to take a strip of muslin, and I love doing this. To me, this is just a really great way to decorate some of your pages. And I'm using one of the Prima sets. It's the old paper Prima stamps. And a little bit about this is I did place an order for these. I received half of my order from the supplier that I got it from, or the wholesaler that I got it from. And I tried to get it directly from Prima, but they were sold out. And I was able to get it through one of my wholesale distributors, and they only had half of them available. So for those of you who are still waiting on this, I have more coming. More are on their way. I ordered quite a few of them. So I will have this stamp set back in stock very soon. And what I did is I just took one of those stamps and I stamped it in the Rose Madder shade, and then I'm taking and I'm using the Blue Violet and the Aquamarine archival ink shades, and just again using some of my antique stamps where you see me stamping Secret, Confidential, so forth over that Prima stamp that I first used. And now again I'm using one of those other stamps from that set, that Prima set, and I decided to go in with the plum shade, just kind of taking little sections here and there, creating this collage on my muslin. Now again, if you don't have the same exact stamps that I have, and chances are you're not going to, but you can use other text stamps, number stamps, script stamps. The registered letters stamp, I now have that in stock. That's another wonderful stamp, and you'll see me use that here later on. You could use that stamp. It's one I highly recommend. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this step. I think the main thing is just how you place everything down on the muslin, how you collage it, making sure that you see I have different sized fonts. And so I have really itsy bitsy tiny script, and then I have these huge numbers, and then I have kind of a smaller size font with the Secret and where it says paid, and then using the different colored inks. And I decided to carry a lot of the different shades of the archival inks in my shop. So I will have those coming. Again, I'm just going to kind of see how it goes, and if they sell well, then I'll carry some more of them and bring in more of the shades, because they have so many beautiful shades. Okay, so I have my muslin strip all collaged, and now I'm just figuring out how I want to build this page up. And I decided to cut down that strip that I collaged, and when I do this, I usually just take scrap pieces of muslin that I have, and so they vary in size, but I usually do a larger section so I can tear from it and use smaller sections and just kind of make it go a little further. And I really like the layered edge there, how you have the text and then that muslin. And I'm going to just take and glue down that edge and glue it down onto that left flap of the page there. And then I decided to take some of these smaller strips that I had, you know, just these little pieces that I have left over, and I'm going to use those too. And so again, I'm just going to stamp a few things on there and call it good and add those to my page. It's just a great way to add these little accents of these different fabric textures, you know, with the frayed edges and so forth. And I do like to take a little bit of the Distress Oxide, usually in the vintage photo, and just distress some of those frayed edges just to kind of give it that stained vintage look. Okay, so I have my strip all ready to go here, and I decided that I wasn't crazy about the strip with the bee. I guess the way the bee is kind of like I cut it off, the way I cut that piece there, to me it reminds me of a spider. I'm not a big spider fan. Like, it kind of reminds me of a spider with wings. I hate spiders. So I wasn't crazy about it. And yeah, I decided to cover it up. And so what I'm doing is I'm starting by taking the strip here and just kind of, you know, gluing that into that crease there. And then I'm going to take one of the ephemera pieces from the Parisian Charm collection and use that to cover up that section of the strip, just kind of where it covers the bee. I mean, had I gotten the entire bee, I don't think it would have bothered me as much. But when I was seeing the back end with the legs, yeah, it just reminded me way too much of a spider. Okay, so before I lay that ephemera piece down, I did take one of the tags from the Fashion Bazaar digital collection. And I had this scrap piece of parchment paper, and so I'm just using that tag as kind of a template to cut around it and create another tag with this parchment paper here. And I go back to it and I'll show you when I end up doing it, but yeah, you're gonna want to go ahead and make a tag, either using a template or you might already have tags, you know, just having a few tags available. And then I do stamp them using stamps from that old paper stamp set by Prima. And now I'm just taking a journal card. And if you don't have these, you could use lined paper, back it against cardstock. And there's that ephemera piece or journal card, the Le Journal. What does it say? Le Journal des Poètes. Des Poètes. Oh my God, like slaughtering French language here. Sorry. Anyway, that card that's the ephemera piece I was talking about that I used to cover up my spider bee looking creature. And now I'm going to glue down my lined paper, and I just apply a little strip of glue on each side right next to where that crease is, just to kind of hold it in place. And as you can see, it's starting to come together. So we're getting one side done here. We got the left side. And I have that section of that flip out. I don't know what I want, that flip out pocket section there. And I decided to use one of the lined papers and I tuck it inside of there. You'll see that here shortly. For now, I'm trying to figure out what to do with the front of my signature page and maybe what I might want to put on the right side. So I pulled one of the lined papers from the Winged Elements collection, and here's that leftover piece, that draft lined paper that I was using previously. I'm going to use that for the middle section. And I'll come back to that. So I switched gears and I got one of the envelopes from, my bills, and I have one of my lined papers from Parisian Charm, and I liked the Eiffel Tower and the little stamp section there. So I fussy cut that out and I decided to back it against white cardstock. You could use any cardstock, really. It's not going to matter if you have colored cardstock. I just wanted to give it a little bit more durability because I was going to create a pocket with it. And I have my edge piece that I fussy cut out from that lined paper, and then I fussy cut out one of the vintage fashion ladies from Fashion Bazaar, one of the Fashion Bazaar papers. And now I'm taking the registered letter stamp. Again, I have these in stock now. It was quite the wait for these. I think they sold out twice. So I had to wait for 3 separate shipments to come in before I could finally get my entire order. And so I do have these in stock now. I'm so excited I finally get to play with it. Love using this stamp. And so I just took that stamp and stamped the top left corner of my envelope. Then I took some book paper down below. I tried to stamp down at the bottom right, but you should really season your stamps first, and I didn't do that. And what I mean by season them is do a few 2-3 stamp impressions before you want to actually do your final or whatever you're going to stamp your image onto, because sometimes it won't absorb that ink. There's some sort of residue on the stamps sometimes, and so you just want to stamp it a few times before you actually go to stamp it on your project. And now I'm just kind of taking a little piece of that lined paper there that I fussy cut out previously and just piecing some on my papers. This is great for using those little bits of papers that you have left over from previous projects. I'm very eclectic, as you can tell, with the style of everything. It's a Mod Podge of just everything, but I love that because to me it just creates that interest on your page or your envelope or tag or whatever it is that you might be creating. And so I'm going to cut another little section from that piece of lined paper that I cut out. Just kind of piecing little bits of paper here is all I'm doing. I did distress in both vintage photo and then peeled paint. So those were the 2 distress oxide colors that I used on my envelope there. And now I'm going to create my pocket on my envelope. So I just glue down that left side and bottom. And then I have my lady that I fussy cut out, and I do back her against some white cardstock again just to make her a little more durable because I had printed her on standard copy paper. And so when I do that and I want something to make sure it's going to hold up better and not crease or fold, and I need it to be a little more durable, then I'll just take and back it onto some cardstock. And then I took a little strip of my muslin and stamped on it with the registered letter stamp. Just using up all those little bits and pieces of muslin fabric that I have. And I did try to get more muslin, and right at the moment, I don't know if it's because there's a lot of people making masks or what the deal is, but it's really hard to get right now. Everything was sold out, but I am trying to get some more in stock so I can offer that. If you don't have muslin, you could use white cotton fabric. You could use, you could go to the thrift stores and pick up pillowcases and just rip those and use, you could use that and stamp on it. There's so many different things that you could do. Old sheets. So I just have my little strips that I stamped, and that's about it. I mean, as you can see, it's pretty simple. I'm just taking and using some scrap pieces of paper. My main focal point was the Eiffel Tower, and the lady that I fussy cut out cradled that little pocket there with the Eiffel Tower. Some book paper stamped, some scrap pieces of fabric, and yeah, you could just have yourself a fun old time decorating those envelopes that a lot of us throw away, but it's a great way to recycle them, and just they decorate beautifully. And then for the inside window there, I'm going to take one of the papers from Fashion Bazaar, or no, I'm sorry, it's from Parisian Charm. And I'm going to take where it says, I think like Madame Dior, and have that text show through the window of my envelope. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you do want to make sure when you're doing this, when you're decorating your envelope, you check to see which way the flap goes to make sure it's going to swing open whichever way you want it to go. So it's not upside down or going the wrong direction. And that was one thing I accidentally did, so I had to revise how I was going to do my signature page, because I should have had that flap going to where it was going on the right side, and instead it's going to be on the left side. Okay, so my envelope is coming along now. I just want to work or do something with that flap there on the left side. This is where I backed the lady with the white cardstock, so I did do that. I just glued it down, or glued her down onto the white cardstock, and then fussy cut her out again. It's better, you're able to watch this, and so you can see what's going to happen, but I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I would have normally printed it on my 110-pound white cardstock, and then I wouldn't have had to take and do that additional step, but it was pretty easy to do. Not a big thing. There's lots of times I have papers already printed and I want to use them, and so when I run across things that I want to make more durable, again, I just take some of my cardstock and just back it with the cardstock. So I decided to take that other strip of muslin that I stamped previously, and I'm going to use that to decorate that flap of my envelope. And so you can see I kind of have this shabby chic, maybe a little grungy looking envelope, but I love it. I mean, again, it's eclectic. It's got these different textures and collage, everything running through there. There's just a lot to look at. And then I have that interactive pocket with the lady. And I decided to add one of the tickets, and I think I'm going to call that done. So now what I'm going to do is, again, using some of the new lined paper from the Fashion Bazaar collection, I'm just going to take and cut off those white edges, and I'm going to cut it right down the middle to create two separate sheets. And then I did decide to take my chomper and I rounded the corners, and I distressed the edges, and I distressed them in the vintage photo Distress Oxide. And here I'm just trying to figure out how I want to start building everything and where I want to place everything. And so I kind of just go back and forth with, laying everything down and figuring out, is this where I want this? Do I want to use this paper? Do I want to use this ephemera? And I like showing you these steps. I mean, a lot of times you can see where I start doing something and then it'll change and then it'll change again. But that is my process on how I do things and how I build my journals. And I think it is a journey. I mean, journal making is a journey for sure. But it's a fun one because I think it's really neat to, especially when I'm doing these videos, to see where something starts and then see the finished product and how everything comes together. So I decided to take one of the CD cases, and I used one of the papers from Fashion Bazaar, and I thought that lady there would work perfectly for the window of my CD case or sleeve, my CD sleeve. And then I decided I just took and did a quick circle. I traced that circle on the CD sleeve, and then I cut out that circle to protect the window section there so I could do some stamp work on there. And again, you could just use whatever text stamps you have. You could do script, you could do stencils. You could do like I did with the envelope and just take scraps of your papers, and there's so many different things you could do as far as decorating the CD sleeves and envelopes. I just think it's fun to incorporate these because, again, they have flaps, and you heard me mention that earlier. I love to work with flaps. That's how you're able to layer things in your signatures. You'll see me add in other flaps using some of the scrap pieces of cardstock from when we made some of our signature pages. So that'll be coming up soon. And here I'm using the registered letter stamps again. I just love this stamp set. I was so happy that I was able to work with Blue Fern in getting this stamp set because I know so many of you requested it, and yeah, it was popular. It was a hit, and I'm so glad all of you are enjoying it or having fun with it. And for those of you who haven't purchased it yet, again, I have about 20 in stock, so I do have them available and can ship those out right away unless I end up selling more than what I have in stock. But I think, as far as I'm aware of, Blue Fern and I worked together on getting more of these, and so if I needed to order more through them, I would be able to do that. So you won't have to wait a month or longer for this stamp. But I don't know, I never know how things might sell. So if you see it, I guess don't wait and make sure you pick one up. All right. So I think I have pretty much everything stamped down like I like it, and I'm just going to distress those edges. And I decided to take some of the scrap pieces I had of this eyelet lace, and I'm going to use those bits of trim pieces to kind of frame that window there. So again, if you have any scraps of lace or trim that you're wanting to use up, this is a great way to use it. And I did have to take and cut everything into smaller pieces to get it to go in that circular shape without, it creating gaps. So you'll see me cut everything down here, and then I'm just going to glue it and place it all around the frame. And again, it just gives another texture, and I think it gives it more of a finished edge going around that window there. And I think it really, it also kind of softens things a little bit too. So I'm just going to trim that little piece off there and call that done. And now I just need to figure out how I want to incorporate this into my signature. Oh, I did take another strip of muslin and I stamped it, and I'm going to add that to that flap there. And here's where you see me distressing those frayed edges. Again, using the vintage photo and the peeled paint. And as far as the back side of this, I didn't do anything with it in this video, but moving forward, I might. It's up to you. You could leave it blank and just leave it as a space to do some journaling. You could leave it as a space to, where you might want to add photos. You don't have to decorate everything. You might want to have some white spaces for adding in text or your own writing, or where you might want to add in some photos, whatever it might be. And here's where I'm taking those 2 lined papers that I cut down, and I'm gluing just the top, because I want to be able to use the back side of the lined paper, and I want to be able to use what's underneath. And now I'm going to create some of those flaps that I was talking about. So I have this 6x6 piece of cardstock, and I'm not sure if this came from one of the card kits in Fashion Bazaar, but you can use one of the pattern papers that I have from that kit. And again, I'm just figuring out how I want to build some of those layers. So going back to that parchment paper tag that I traced, or that I cut around that other tag, I'm going to stamp that, and then I'm going to take just some little bits of trim and add that to the top. And again, you could just use whatever tags you might have. Maybe you have a tag punch. I think I have quite a few tags available in my kit. You could use one of those. And here I have one of the receipts. This is just a receipt from a receipt pad that I got at Dollar Tree, and using that stamp from the old paper Prima set. Again, I'll have those back in stock probably in the next week or so. And then I'm going to use more of my antique stamps. I love my antique stamps. Again, I plan on releasing a set that's going to be very similar to some of my antique stamps. The ones that, don't really have a copyright to them. And so ones that will say secret, confidential, paid, so forth. And I hope to have that available, as soon as possible. But it is in the works. I'm working on it as we speak. And so I took a piece of white cardstock, and it's about 4 inches in height, and it's about 10 inches in width. And I just took that plain piece of white cardstock in, again, about 4 inches in height by 10 inches wide, and folded it in half. And so I created another flap. And I'm just figuring out how I want to lay everything down onto my flap. So I just took a paper clip and I'm going to use that to hold my CD sleeve that I decorated. And then on the back I have one of the journal cards from the Parisian Charm Kit. There you can see how I have the other side of that flap going underneath the lined paper. And then this way, with the use of flaps, you can see with, it allows you to build those layers, but you're able to use everything underneath. You're not taking up valuable journaling space by gluing everything flat down onto a page. And that's what I love about the use of flaps. And so I'm gluing down just the left side. And then again, I might come back and decorate the back side of that a little more. But for now, I just kind of am building my layers here. I decided to take one of the envelopes from the Parisian Charm digital collection, and I'm stamping that top of the flap there, and I'm only going to glue the bottom half of the envelope, which you'll see me do here in a little bit. Of course, I want to distress those edges. I'm using the peeled paint again. And the reason why I'm only going to glue down that left half, or that left corner there, is because I kind of want to create this little pocket to where I can just slide things through that envelope. And then I'll use that top section as my flap to where I can flip everything up and then still be able to use my lined paper underneath. And so I have one of the calendar pages that came from my mom's kit, and I have one of the postcards that I got from the Winged Elements digital collection. And this is where you can just fill, with whatever journal cards you might have. I'm using one of the receipts, just kind of throwing in those things that I can use to journal on the back of, but still be able to create that layered decorative element to my signature page. And to hold that down, that envelope, I'm using one of the Embella clips that we created in the first part of the workshop. And I'm just sliding it through that envelope to hold everything in place. And so now I want to decorate that front part of my Embella clip, and what I'm going to do is I have one of these, or I have a part of a page from the Fashion Bazaar collection, and I'm just cutting out that section that actually looks like part of an advertisement. And then I'm going to take my Embella clip and trace around one of the new Fashion Bazaar lined papers. Now on this one, I printed it in portrait orientation. Normally I print in landscape, but I wanted it smaller, so I printed it in the portrait orientation. And you can go into your printer settings, and you can select if you want it in portrait or landscape. Again, most of the time you're going to want it in landscape. That's where you get the full size. But if you want to make it smaller, just select portrait orientation, and it's about half the size. And so I traced around my Embella clip, and now I'm just kind of cutting everything down to size. I rounded my corners with my chomper, And I'm going to adhere that to the front of my umbrella clip. So again, you can see I'll have more journaling space there. And then I might add in my advertisement. You can use the back of that advertisement to journal on. Or you could add a little photo. This is the one thing I love about journal making, is because it doesn't really limit you to just one thing. There's so many different things you can do with the journal. And, you know, I can't think of a better time to actually create journals and write down everything that's going on, to, you know, leave something behind and have something that your family or children or whoever, friend, whoever might be, you know, come along and be able to read something, a part of history, a part of your life, whatever it might be. I love journals. And, you know, to have it beautiful and decorated and everything is just that added bonus. Put that artistic craftsmanship into it. And it also gives you the opportunity to play with a bunch of stamps and inks and all sorts of things. I mean, I'd love to do more art journal pages, and I plan on doing that with a fairy collection. I'm coming out with a digital fairy collection very soon. And I plan on doing some art journal pages with that. So I love playing with the paints and the markers, and yeah. All right, so I have my umbrella clip. I decorated it a little bit with those lined papers and that little advertisement. And so it's coming along nicely, I think. And you can see as I'm flipping through this. Now, I don't know why I have this color change all of a sudden. I don't know what happened. It was weird. And I got this like bluish shadow going on with my camera. Not sure why. It goes away here in a few minutes. Okay, so this is like day 2 that we're going on, or night 2. And so what I'm doing here is, from part 1 of the workshop, we created this little kind of pocket folder, and I'm just gluing those edges, because when we go to put our papers and journal cards in there, we don't want everything falling out of the sides. So all I'm doing is just taking and applying a little strip of glue on each side to enclose that, to create those pockets there. And that's all I'm doing. And then I set it off to the side, and we'll use this on the inside of our cover is where I'm thinking I'm going to use it, but I haven't really decided what sort of cover I want to create. I'm going to create a soft journal cover, but I might line the inside of it with something like chipboard to create a harder surface. I'm not sure yet, so we'll see when we get there. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm going to continue with building another part of our signature. And I had this fabric. I purchased quite a bit of it. If you are wanting some of this, I'm more than happy to share it with all of you. Shoot me an email. Let me know. I'll send you some. I'm more than happy to sell you some of this, you know, give you a great price. I can even throw a little mini kit together for you if you like, with some of the lace and a little bit of this fabric. Just again, shoot me an email, let me know. I'm more than happy to put something together for you. Please allow me at least a week or 2 to get everything put together, because my schedule is insane. But yeah, I can definitely do that for any of you wanting to, you know, have little bits of trim fabric that I used in creating the journal that we're all making here. And I do have the papers that you're seeing me use here, the gold and the lettered papers there. I do have those in stock. So again, yeah, let me know. If you want me to put together kind of like a mini kit, I'll do that, and I'll put a listing up and, you know, have those available for you. Now, I am leaving for Montana tomorrow. So I will not be returning for 2 weeks. I can't get these out before then, but it will give me some time to at least get it listed, take the orders, and then be able to plan and have everything and building the kits. So when I do return, I can get those shipped out to all of you. Okay, so all I did is I just took and cut out a piece of that fabric, and I took my 2 strips of paper there and went around the window of the envelope. And then I'm going to trim my fabric to the size of my envelope. I have this little scrap piece of fabric. And I think I have one other scrap piece left over from when I cut out those flowers there. You'll see me use it. And I'm going to put that right at that top left corner. It just kind of ties everything together. Easy way to decorate some of these envelopes, and it adds so much to your journal. And I'm just going to trim everything down. And these envelopes are wonderful because you can take some of your lined papers, journal on them, and then tuck them inside of your envelope. And what I did is I took one of the journal cards from Fashion Bazaar collection there, and I just stuffed that inside the envelope. And now I'm going to work on building more of those layers in my signature. And I decided to create a decorative paper clip. So I took one of the ephemera pieces from the Fashion Bazaar digital collection, and I backed it onto some muslin, and I'm going to just cut around it and then glue a paper clip onto the back. And I just think that's a lot prettier than having just a plain old paper clip, you know, on your page. So I'm going to set that to the side, let that dry a little bit. And now I'm going to go back to my tag and glue on those little bits of trim pieces that I have just to, you know, decorate my tag a little bit. Again, when you have little bits of fabric and trim, don't throw it away, because these are perfect for decorating the top of your tags with. And here's some of that lined paper. I did a video on how to make these look like ledger papers, and it's just from the Dollar Tree, you know, those preschool, kindergarten lined papers. That's all that these are. And so I took about 2-3 sheets, and I'm just drawing in some lines. I'm not putting a lot of thought into where I want to put my lines. Just add a few guidelines, I guess you could say, for where you might want to journal. And again, it just to kind of give it more of that ledger look. And I might sit down one day and just do a whole bunch of these, because I think these are super fun to do. Same with the envelopes. I mean, they're just, you don't have to put a lot of thought into it, and you could just have fun and create a way. You could sit and have a nice cup of tea or cocoa or coffee and put on some music and just kick back, and, you know, it's a great way to just relieve some stress or anxiety or whatever it is if you just want a little escape away from whatever. It's a great way to, making these ledger papers and decorating the envelopes. And it's not too expensive. Once I think you only need a few stamp collections and you can do so much with them. I think you see where I use a lot of the stamps repeatedly. You can probably tell which ones are my favorites. I love script stamps. I love the ones that look like ledger stamps. I love my new registered letter stamp collection. Collage stamps, those are wonderful. The caramel one, the postcard one. I would have used that, but I ended up having to sell mine, and then I sold out of them again. I think this will be like the fourth time I've sold out of them, so I will be getting more of those. But they're wonderful stamps, and I mean, I can see why all of you love them so much because there's so much that you can do with them, and it's so easy to incorporate those style of stamps into whatever projects it is you might be working on. Okay, so here's the other side of my, that draft lined paper that I did on my horrible inkjet printer. So I just took my registered letter stamp and I stamped the top left corner. I have my little piece left over from Fashion Bazaar that you see right there with the two ladies, and I'm just cutting that side that had all those advertisements. I end up using those, and you'll see how I use those here in a little bit. And then I'm just going to go back and add a little bit more to my lined page here. You can do so much with just the spills and splatters stencil. I use that all the time. That's one of my staple items. And, the Distress Oxide and Vintage Photo. Yeah, for those of you who are just getting started in journal making, and I know a lot of you ask this, like, what do you need to get started? And I would say, grab a few digital collections, and you could do so much just working off of those. Because if you purchase a digital collection from my shop, I have enough usually in the collection to do a couple journals with. And then from there, if you don't have a printer, you can always get them printed at Staples or Office Max, a place like that. And then just a few collage stamps, script stamp maybe, the spill splatter stencil, have at least the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, and the rest you can just some lined papers, the envelopes from bills. You can find enough of those items to get you by to start building your journal. You can get fabrics at the thrift shop and make it very cost effective. You don't have to spend a fortune to create a journal. And then what I did here while I was talking is I did take some of the beeswax and just applied a light layer to give it more of that aged look, and then heat set it. And now I'm just folding my paper so it will be to the size of my signature there. And I did have to make a couple folds to make it fit in there correctly. So I'm just figuring out how I want to place everything in my page. And you'll see me, I'm constantly taking things, laying them down, seeing how this might look or how that might look. I'm constantly rearranging things, but that's a lot of the process, and I hardly ever glue anything down until I'm pretty sure how I have, how I want my whole page to look. I think gluing things down is one of the last steps that I do. And you could, I had planned on sewing some of my pages into my signature page. You could do that as well. You don't have to glue the page down like you saw me do. You could stitch it, and that's just another beautiful texture that you could add to your page. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm taking one of my flaps that I created from some leftover cardstock, and I embossed it with the Spellbinder's Rook embossing folder, and I still have a few of these left in stock. And then there's an extra piece of white cardstock where I'm just creating another flap. You know, you can just use whatever you might have left over from the first part of the workshop, but I would say that one flap there that I embossed, that's about 3.5 inches in height by 11 inches in width. And then I'm going to take some of this Bronze Age wax and go over the embossed section. Now I know some of you, there's a few of you waiting for this item as well. Now Prima, I don't know with the shutdown if something happened, because they were out of a lot of their waxes. When I went to place my order, I think that they only had about half of the colors available, and a lot of their mediums that I'm trying to get back in stock, like the gel mediums, the gesso, all of that, they've been sold out, and I think they might have just got everything back in stock. But anyway, the Bronze Age, I have that coming. It just got back in stock as of yesterday. So for those of you waiting, and I know it's been probably 3-4 weeks that you've been waiting for this. Again, I'm not sure if the shutdown had any impact on that, but you know, the shutdown really, it slowed things down for sure. And things that I could normally get within 1 to 2 weeks, it's now taking me sometimes 3-4 weeks to get some of my items in. So for those of you who weren't able to get your orders right away, I feel really bad, and it's been stressful, but at the same time it's been beyond my control, and I'm doing everything that I possibly can to get everything shipped out as fast as I can and work off a very limited budget. It's been difficult to say the least. I do appreciate all of you who have been so patient and have showed such tremendous support to allow me to be able to continue to do what I love and continue to offer free online workshops like I'm doing here, because without those orders coming in, I couldn't take time to do free workshops or free online classes like I do. It just, I couldn't take that time to do that. I'd have to devote it to something where I had, you know, money coming in to support my business. But because all of you are supporting me through the orders and through my shop, that is what enables me to continue to do the free classes and workshops. So just a little bit about how that works and how I'm able to do that. I couldn't continue to do this if it wasn't for all the support that all of you have given me in my shop. So I'm truly grateful for that, and thank you so much. I know I've said it in some other previous videos, but it really, I'm not sure if I explained it, how everything ties together, and so yeah, it just means the world. Okay, so what I did is, kind of going back, is I took one of the envelopes from one of my bills, I cut it in half, and then I stamped on it using one of the old paper stamps, and then I took another receipt and I used the Spills Splatter stencil to create that distressed look on there. And now I'm just using some of my antique stamps to stamp it. I think stamping adds so much to, you know, little things like your envelopes and these receipts. And then I discovered that if you stamp on the back side of the receipt, the ink comes through ever so lightly on the other side. And I kind of liked that look. And that white piece of cardstock that I created into a flap, I just took that piece and folded it in half. That measurement, I think that's probably about I would say about 4 inches in height, and it's about 6 inches in width, maybe 6.5 inches in width. I would say somewhere around there. But again, you know, it's when you're doing your flaps, they can be all different sizes. And actually, you want some wider, you want some, you know, higher. You want them to be kind of different in length so you can get that layered effect happening. So that white piece of cardstock, here it is, and so you can see my measurements. I was close. It's 7 3/4 by 3.5. Oh, not too bad. So now I'm taking one of my lined papers. This is from the Parisian Charm collection. I'll have all these collections, the digital collections that I used. I'll have those in the description. And I'm just taking and cutting each section so it'll fit on each side of my flap there. So it's going to be the 3.5 inches in height, and then let's see, half of 7 3/4. So it's going to be about 3. It's going to be about 3 3/4 by 3 3/4 inch for that lined paper section that I cut there. I decided for the other side that I was going to take one of the lined papers and cut it down to the 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, and I'm going to make 3 cuts, so I'll have 3 pieces with those measurements. And I'm going to create a waterfall effect here. And first I'm going to distress those edges. And then after I distress everything, I'm going to lay them, kind of like I said, in that waterfall effect, and glue the top, just the very top of each piece. And then I'm going to make a fold at the top so it lays, you know, perfectly inside that right section of my flap there. So again, I just kind of laid it on my flap there to figure out where I wanted to fold that top, just so, you know, none of that would hang down below my flap. And then I'm going to just glue the top there, and I'll have my little waterfall effect of lined papers. I did take some just standard copy paper, and this stamp that I'm using is from the Prima Midnight Garden collection. I have quite a few of these in stock. I think I have 6 or more in stock. So if you're wanting this, I do have it. And I loved that little receipt stamp in the collection. I didn't show everything that came, but you can kind of see to the left side there's some feathers, and you'll see that souvenir postcard stamp, and then down it says by airmail. So it's a really cute stamp set, and I plan on using those feathers in my upcoming fairy collection series that'll be coming up after this series. So I will be using it again in the near future. And I'm just distressing everything. For my flap there, I believe I used worn lipstick. And then I'm just going to take and do a little more stamping with some of my antique stamps. I love this Documents Only stamp. I use that all the time, and that is one that will be in my new stamp collection. So you'll all be able to stamp, you know, very, very similar pages, I guess I'm trying to say, with the new stamp set that I hope on release, I hope to have that released very soon. And I'm excited to release that stamp set. So if anything ever happens to one of my antique stamps and I accidentally ruin it or whatever, at least there will be this backup that I can always go to. Okay, so now I'm just working with my flaps, figuring out how I want to lay them in my signature page. I decided to put one flap on the top and one on the bottom. And again, you can see this is a wonderful way to create that layered effect in your signature. And you're still able to use, all this journaling space. So what I'm taking here now is this washi tape from Prima. I do have these in stock. I think I have about 6 or so of these in stock. Love this washi tape. And I do have a few more coming. It's been discontinued. So if you like it, grab it. That's all I have to say. I'm limited in stock. Again, I have about 6, and I think I have a few more coming. But I do love it. And then I'm going to take that envelope, that half piece of envelope, and just glue that flap so it'll flip up there. And then I can put a journal card inside of that envelope. And it's coming along nice. I have my lined papers. I decided to use the receipt, so I'm going to create a fold at the top again so it will flip up and I can still use my lined paper underneath. And I can use the back side of my receipt for journaling space. Well, not really, because I stamped I stamped a lot on it, but you could put a picture on the back or something to that effect. I loved these little pieces of advertisements that I cut out from one of the Fashion Bazaar pages. I ended up taking them and creating these little tabs, which you'll see me do here in a little bit. I'm just kind of playing around here, figuring out how I want to put everything together, because I have a lot going on with the flaps and the envelopes. I decided to take one of the ephemera pieces from the Fashion Bazaar collection, and I'm gluing just that top piece, and I'm going to lay it underneath my flap there, the side that I embossed on. And then I'm going to lay down some trim underneath, just a scrap piece I had left over. But again, I love to layer. I love the different textures. And yet I still like to make sure that I have all of that journaling space. Okay, so we're getting to the end of this signature page here. Going back to my tag, I need to glue down those little pieces of trim onto the top there. And I'm just pretty quick. I really don't put a lot of thought into it. I'm just kind of gluing them down pretty quickly. They're just little bits and pieces that, I had left over. And rather than throwing them away, again, they work great for adding little bits and bobs and decorative elements to your tags. And then I have a charm to finish it off. And here's where I took those little pieces from one of the Fashion Bazaar pages that had the little advertisement section, and I cut those down, and I'm going to create these little tabs on the bottom of my lined papers. Again, just creating more of a, like another layer to that whole waterfall effect going on there. All right, and now just getting to those final steps here of how I'm going to attach everything within this signature. And again, gluing is usually one of the last steps that I do. I really want to be sure I have everything laid down in place perfectly before I glue or sew or stitch or anything like that. And with all these layers, you know, just do my best to kind of make it so I can layer everything and use all those spaces that I want for journaling. And when I am gluing, you can see I'm usually just gluing the very top of each page. I always have things either flipping to the side or flipping up from the top. And I stagger my pages when I lay them down. I don't have things lined up perfectly because I like that staggered look. To me, it gives it that layered look that I love. Like when you see a journal from the side and it's got all these beautiful layers and textures and you can see these different papers coming through. That's, you know, rather than have it all lined up perfectly. I loved that kind of staggered look to my journals. And it's up to you. You know, you might like everything neat and all lined up perfectly, and you can do that. Again, you might want to stitch as opposed to glue. This is just to give all of you an idea of how to build these signature pages using flaps and how to layer everything. Because I hear from you so many different times about how you'll print out a collection, but then you're not sure even where to start. And even I struggle with that sometimes, even after making I don't know how many journals I've made, quite a few, but even I struggle. I don't know where to begin. And I guess the best thing I can say is print the collection, cut things out, cut out your ephemera, and then just take a piece of something, take an envelope and decorate the envelope, and then build some flaps, and then start layering from your flaps and stamp some of your pages and add in some plain tea-stained papers. And you'll see as you start working through these processes and you start, building sections of a journal, rather than look at it as a complete journal, just kind of dissect it and do bits and pieces of it. And it will get you going, I think, to where you won't struggle so much with where do you start. Grab some of your favorite stamps, maybe a theme. You might be in the mood for something, or go eclectic and have an assortment of things, or maybe have leftover scraps of paper and fabrics, and again just start decorating some tags or envelopes and work from that, build from that. And then I think you'll find you can easily start building your journal and not feel trapped, like, where do I start? Because it's overwhelming to think, about how you're going to make a journal in the sense of the entire journal versus just a part or just a section of a journal. And now I'm just kind of adding a few more decorative elements by using some stamps. And I think it's close to done. I have this one other piece of paper with the advertisement there that I think I'm going to use as a tab, another tab. And I figure, you can always flip it up and journal on the back side or put a little photo on the back side. So much you can do. I decided not to use the paper clip, but I'm sure I'll use it later on. And I'm just adding those final touches here and there. Just kind of, as you can see, I will grab a piece of ephemera and I just kind of play with it and see, does it look good here? Does it look good there? And maybe I don't end up using it, or as you can see, I found a good place for it. And that's where it helps to have all of your papers cut out ahead of time and have a good amount of ephemera cut out and next to you. So you kind of grab things and play with them. And that helps in that whole process as well in building your journal. And I really love the way that this signature page came together. It's just got so much going on. It's got the handmade ledger papers. It's got the old time, the papers from my own personal collection of antique fashion magazines, the private mailing card that I did from one of my personal collections of a vintage autograph album. And again, I can't wait to have my stamp set that I'm going to release that'll have, like secret and confidential and all of that. I'll be releasing that very soon. Just, I hope you all, again, enjoyed this part of the whole workshop. I felt like we really got to play a lot, do a lot of stamping and working with flaps and layering, and just did a lot of different things with this part of the workshop, and I had a blast. So I hope all of you did too. I hope you learned a lot, and please keep the comments coming. I really appreciate the feedback. It just makes it just, all the more worthwhile in doing these videos is hearing your comments and knowing that you're getting some value out of it, that you're learning, that it's inspiring you to create or make a journal for the first time or make another journal. And so please keep those comments coming. If you have any questions about the mini kits or just some of the items that you saw me use and maybe I missed something, I didn't get it put in the description, please feel free to shoot me an email. Let me know if I can help with anything. Sometimes it might take me 24, 48 hours to get back to you because I do get a lot of messages, but I do my best to answer all of them. And I do ask, if you don't hear from me within 3-4 days, please feel free to shoot me another email message. If you don't hear from me for a second time, send me another email message. I will get back to you. I will. Okay, so you can see I'm just adding those final touches, and I decided with this signature page, because I had done everything on some tea stained paper, I felt it needed a little more support. So I ended up taking the base signature page that we created in part 1 that is like the folder page right here, and I tuck the signature down into that folder section of my base page there, and it works perfectly. So everything's like now, so you know, it's got the support that it needs for everything within that signature that we built. And I love the way it turned out. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to stitch everything down the center to hold everything together or if I'm going to glue it. So I just kind of left that for now. But other than that, our signature page is done. And I'm just seeing these additional areas where, you know, I might have some white space, but I want to leave it open to journaling or whatever. But, you know, wanted to stress those edges. Just kind of playing around. And yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a good place to stop. Now this page that you see here, this is from one of my private antique books that I got from Paris. And I'm going to be releasing a whole collection of those pages. So that will be coming up. I love these pages. I love them. They're sentimental to me. They remind me of my time in Paris that I spent with Madeline and Christian, and we went to the market and I was able to get those treasures. Oh, I had so much fun. I'm gonna have to go back someday just to go back to the market. It was amazing. All right, so yeah, I hope all of you enjoyed this part of this series. Again, leave me your comments. Let me know what you thought. And as you can see, we're getting close to having an actual journal put together here. And so for the next 2 videos, we'll work more on some signature pages, start putting everything together. And then the last video will be the cover. And, you know, we'll decorate the cover, put it all together, and we'll have a complete finished journal, which will be really exciting. And as far as this journal that I finished here, I might do a giveaway on it. Speaking of giveaways, I did have one other one with the Caramel fairy stamp, and what you had to do is you had to incorporate 2 of my stamps. It was the fairy stamp with the dress form stamp, and just to create a mixed media or art journal page with it. And the winner was going to win an Anna Griffin Empress die cutting machine, and I have one. I love it. It's amazing. I need about 10 more entries. So if you're interested in that giveaway, just send me an email and let me know. I'll give you the details on it. But I am looking for about 10 more entries so I can do that giveaway. Okay, so I'm just kind of going through everything. You can see a few signature pages here like this one with the lined papers, and I'll probably, you know, go into further detail on how to create those pages, and then we'll decorate them. Again, we'll probably do like maybe 2 more signature pages, and then I think it'll be good. As you can see, we have quite a bit done here. And then we'll work into making our soft cover journal, except for those of you who might have purchased the kit and already have that made. You're going to be a little ahead of us, but maybe you might want to create another one. So that will be coming in the following video. All right, everyone. Thank you again so much. I hope to catch you all back for part 5 of this journal making workshop.